We continue our adventures with the pre-Socratics and the Milesians with our good dead friend Anaximemes. Little background for him. He was active around 545 BC, and of course eventually became inactive when he died. He is reputed to have written a book that was more scientific and less poetic than the works of Thales and Anaximander. His main question was this. First, in terms of setting up the question, he did accept Thales' assumption that there is one basic kind. He also accepted Anaximander's view that it must be eternal and unlimited, but he is critical of Anaximander to say that the basic entity is the apeiron is to be rather vague. If it is known that there is a basic entity, something more specific must be known about it, and he sets up to find a more precise answer to the question. So how does he do this? His answer was this. The basic kind is air, as opposed to water. Now, like many of the super dead ancient philosophers, we don't have their actual writings, or at least much of them, so we rely on what others have said about them. So the speculation is that his view is based on the following reasons. First, air is more pervasive than water. Roughly put, there seems to be more of it. Secondly, air is a very central thing. It is necessary for fire and can also be found in earth and water. Water falls when not, supported, so he considers Thales to be wrong. Water cannot support the earth. Since air, he believed, apparently, can support itself, so it could support the celestial objects. And, of course, air sustains life. No air, no life. And also, we see a notion of the soul. And he takes the soul to be air. The last breath is a soul leaving the body, or so he claimed. And this is, something that persists in sort of popular culture, the idea of the breath of life, and, the idea of last breath. More for our good dead friend, Anax, to give him a nickname he would no doubt hate, had two principles of change. The first is the principle of rarefaction, which is expansion. Rarefied air, according to him, gives us fire. The second principle is the principle of condensation, which involves compression. And on his view, condensed air becomes wind, water, earth, and stone. He used the first recorded experiment, and again, we don't know who conducted the first experiment for sure because so much lost knowledge and so many lost records, to support his view. And it's a very simple experiment that you can try yourself at home. If you blow air with an open mouth, like on your hand, it will feel warm. You get a warm breath. But if you mostly close your mouth and blow on your hand, it feels cool. And so he takes that to prove his point. And he held that quantitative changes can account for all qualitative changes. So we've seen some important stuff here, namely the development of principles, which of course becomes kind of a hallmark of science and academics and philosophy. He also takes the notion that you can explain qualitative matters quantitatively, which is something that persists to this day. To give a tech example, the idea that we can quantify qualities when analyzing consumer behavior, etc., analyzing people's social media, to therefore create algorithms to sell people more stuff. Continuing with our good dead friend Anax, his importance was this. He contributed the view that abstract thought must be suitably tempered by conceptual clarification. He criticized Anaximander for taking the basic reality to be indefinite. If this were true, we could know but little about it, and the concept would have little explanatory power, which is, as we saw back in the beginning, one of the methods of assessing metaphysical theories. Even back in the ancient days, there was a standard of explanatory power. Less explanatory power, the worse. He also addressed the problem of change in a more detailed and scientific manner than his predecessors. And so we see the development of scientific techniques with our good dead friend. Now, to finish up the pre-Socratic Milesians, here's a bit about what they contributed, why they're important, why we still talk about them, today. First sort of set of contributions is that they contributed to the philosophical method. The Milesians did not explicitly address the epistemic problem of how we obtain knowledge, which is, true. But both Thales and Anaximenes presented early versions of what we now call empiricism, which is a view that all knowledge about what there is derived from sense experience. This is in contrast to rationalism, we'll see more of this in the future, which is a view that you can know at least some things by pure reason. So for the empiricist, everything you know about the world, what's out there, comes from the senses. So all knowledge about what is comes from the senses. And the rationalist, again, as we'll see this battle, be waged over eons, take the view that at least some of the things can be from pure reason. They also took the basic substance to be something observable. You can see, water. You can see, you can't see. You can't see air, but you can see its effects. Now, Anaximander put forth an early version of what we call rationalism, which, as I noted, is that not all knowledge is derived from the senses. That is to say, you can know some things by pure reason. And so for him, the way you prove that the apeiron exists is not observation, because you can't, observe it, obviously in its whole. And so it's supported by argumentation rather than observation. So we see the eternal war of empiricists versus rationalists perhaps begin here in the ancient Greeks. And again, as we'll see throughout the course of the course, it persists to this day. The second set of contributions are contributions to metaphysics. One is, as we saw, is the appearance versus reality problem. The world appears to us one way, but what is the actual underlying reality? To use a matrix analogy, what lies beneath the appearances, what is the code? And philosophers and scientists going forward do address this question, because one of the things that science and philosophy does is it typically presents to us, with some notable exceptions, that what we experience is not what is really real for real. And we'll see much more of this in the future. They also introduced what's called ontological or metaphysical monism. Again, that there is but one basic ontological kind. And for like Thales, who believed that it's all water, it was a form of materialism, which what exists is physical. They also gave us the problem of change. So these ancient dead guys, before they were ancient and dead, contributed a great deal to the foundations of philosophy and also science. So pretty important dead guys. So stay safe, and I'll see you in the future.